Hello there. So today I am going to be talking to you about the Baroque Tarot. This is a deck that I've had for quite some time. I believe I got it when she first released them. Can't remember exactly when, but it was like really early on in purchasing, or when this deck was released. I got this. I have used it so much, and I actually did purchase a second deck. Um, so it's a great box, nice, sturdy, compact. It's about the size of the cards, but it has a magnet on the side, which I really appreciate. The inside of this says this deck calls the user to care for their soul with much love, to open their heart and mind, to learn their lessons and better themselves, and to have faith that all will unravel as it should. I think that's really lovely. Got a nice little book, pretty basic. Meaning of the card, reverse meaning of the card, and upright and reverse keywords. Has a nice gold foil. The edges do have gilding, but you can see it's been worn away from a lot of use. I will say this, I love this finish. I love this card, the card stock, but it does it will wear relatively quickly compared to cards that have like a glossier finish or a glossier matte finish. I guess a satin finish or a rose petal. I feel like those would definitely wear better than this, but I don't mind the wear. It just means that it's a very, very loved deck. I will say in the beginning, this was a bit of a bear to shuffle. They were really stiff, but the more you use them, the more, they shuffle nicely and they'll break in. This deck just always feels good in my hand, and it's a deck that it gives a solid, concise, clear, to the point reading, and I'll talk more about that when I'm showing you all of the cards. But I love it. So I would love, if you have this deck, go ahead and comment. I'd like to hear your opinions on it. It is one that I do highly recommend for your collection if you are a collector. So enough of me talking about this. Let's move on to the major arcana. Okay, so here we have the major arcana in the Baroque Tarot. And I really like this Fool card. You can see that he's there with the cliff and his white dog, and he has his little bag hanging off of his stick. But I like that he's veiled, because to me that says that he's able to take this risk because he is sort of unaware of what he is going to be uncovering and discovering along this path, on this journey. And so sometimes I think in order to take these risks, like I said, we have to, it might behoove us to sort of not be able to see behind the veil at that time. So that's what I like a lot about this Fool card. The Magician in this deck is definitely a little bit dark, and excuse me, it feels like he has a lot to offer, but only if you are not afraid if you are not afraid to explore that darkness. It sits above strength, and strength is above the devil. And what I found interesting when I laid them out like this is these are both very dark cards, but we have strength here, sort of bringing in light to that darkness. And it almost feels like in order to deal with the devil, obviously, you need a lot of strength to be able to cut ties with him, to accept the invitation of the magician. Let's see what else. The Empress and the Emperor both feel very strong in their respective elements. I guess they're not elements, but they both feel like pretty strong cards. The Empress feels more present than the Emperor. She seems like she's ready to face things head on, and he feels ready to, go run off and charge off into the future. I really feel like he's in that active energy here. The Hierophant when I was examining the Hierophant, he looks like he is very, very happy in this position of being revered, in this position of being this teacher, in this position of being the one who is the voice of God, right? And people are looking up to him. But when I noticed him in the Devil, all of a sudden he becomes very human. Here, it almost feels like he's taking on this, what's the word I'm looking for? Here, he's sort of like, he wants to be a godhead. He wants to have that power. But here, he is humbled, and we realize in the face of death, he is just a human. So I thought that was interesting when I was looking through these cards. What else? Oh, the fire here in the Devil with his upside down torch. Upright torches symbolize eternal life, and inverted torches symbolize life snuffed out, which makes sense in the Devil, because when we are repeating patterns or repeating unhealthy patterns or toxic patterns in our lives, we literally are snuffing out our life. And we get caught in those cycles. And when that happens, it looks like this flame from the Devil is what is causing the catastrophe here in the Tower. And it kind of made me think about this Devil in a way that if we can cut ties early and get rid of this flame and turn it back upright, we can avoid the catastrophic events of the Tower. And sometimes the Tower is unavoidable, but I do feel that there are times in our life or periods in our life where if we can be self-aware enough to realize this is happening, we can avoid these catastrophic events later on. I like how the Hangman here is sitting above the sun and the moon. This period of surrender, forcing him almost to just give up and give in and let go in order to shed light on what has been hidden within him. And I think even up to this point, he has learned, or she has learned, they have learned. But once we are actually sort of in that place of surrender, we really understand that we have to break down everything in order to rebuild, right? And that's when we can start to unearth like the last remnants that we may have been holding on to allow the sun to kind of shine and come out. So that is my first, or not my first impressions. I've used this deck quite a bit, but those are my impressions of the major arcana and just some of the interactions between the cards when I have them laid out like this. I really do enjoy laying cards out like this because it allows me to play with them and just see them in a different way. So next we will be moving on to the Pentacles. So here is the suit of Pentacles, Ace through King. I would say Ace through 5 is pretty closely aligned with the Rider-Waite-Smith. There's really not many differences that I can see, but what I did notice on this Six of Pentacles is in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the two characters here are usually parallel to each other, and he's usually giving it to this guy here. But in this deck, he's giving it to him. And this guy is all the way back here. And what this makes me feel like is he's investing in his future, right? So the reciprocity comes by not moving backwards, but by focusing on the potential, and the future has the potential, right? So he's turning his back on what didn't work, on the past, and he's investing in his future here. So I thought that shift was interesting. I didn't read the book about that specifically. That's just one of my observations. Sometimes I like to make my own observations first before reading the book because I don't want my perspective to be skewed by what their writings are. But I thought that was really interesting. And then the Seven of Pentacles, he usually has on the Rider-Waite-Smith, a coin or a pentacle down between his legs. And here they are all on the bush. And I feel like this may create a challenge for him, as he's not really able to see where to go from there. He was able to grow this bush due to the generosity of the Six of Pentacles, but it's going to be a challenge for him to see um, more opportunities that can be um, gained from what he has already grown. So it feels like, okay, I've grown, all this growth has happened, now what do I do? He's not seeing the potential to take it further quite yet. He eventually does when he gets here. But the Nine of Pentacles, this is pretty true to the Rider-Waite-Smith for the most part. The change was that the hummingbird, it's a hummingbird instead of a falcon, and it's not on the right hand, it's on the left hand. I didn't really look too much into that. I was focused mostly on the bird. And hummingbirds can symbolize joy and good fortune. And when we are successful, when we've created our personal bounty, um, we definitely can realize how fortunate that we are, and we're in a place where we're comfortable enough that we don't have to worry. And so I feel that that hummingbird really plays into this success of the Nine of Pentacles. So that was an interesting change for me. The Ten of Pentacles is pretty straightforward. So are these two. The King and Queen are definitely more sparsely illustrated than in the Rider-Waite-Smith. And here the Queen is like super focused um, on her abundance, on that rabbit, and what she can create with that abundance. So it's almost like she realizes that she has the ability to create this wonderful, comfortable life, but she's not seeing what she already has. She's just focused on the abundance. That's sort of how I read this one. And the king here is just holding on tightly to that coin. He's coming off a bit greedy to me. He's like achieved great success, and it feels like he's kind of solely focused on himself. And if you look at these two, you know, they're not even seeing each other. They're just in their own little worlds, focused on their abundances. Abundances? I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so that's the Suit of Pentacles. We're going to go on to the Cups next. Okay, so here we are with the Suit of Cups, Ace to King. I would say that all of this is very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith. What I did notice here on this Eight of Cups is that the grouping of cups is different, and he's walking sort of into the scene as opposed to up and right that we see in the Rider-Waite-Smith. And the grouping here is usually 3 and 5, but here it's 6 and 2. So the Two of Cups, I was looking at the Two of Cups here, thinking about how it can relate to this card, and it didn't really fit right with me. So I was looking through everything else, and then I noticed the Two of Cups that were still standing and the Five of Cups. And I feel like these may represent that. And the Six of Cups here remind us of the Six of Cups on this card. So it's sort of like when we grieve and let go of what didn't work, we can then carry the fond memories of the past without being held back from suppressing the hurt. So when we approach the 7, right? When we approach the 7, we do so knowing that we have to choose wisely going forward, so that when we approach the 8, we have taken the 2 standing cups, excuse me, embraced the good memories, and we've shed the bad so that we can move forward having a better understanding of the limitations and what truly will fulfill us. So it in a sense, it feels like in order to get here, we have to grieve, carry the good memories, and understand our limitations by making better choices than we had in the past. And that's kind of how I read into this. So I just thought that that different grouping of cups was interesting. Let's see. And then everything else here is pretty pretty standard, and pretty much follows the Rider-Waite-Smith. There's just a few different variances in this deck, but it's always interesting to see them because they're definitely, where some remain very true to the Rider-Waite-Smith, and small ones like this, it's kind of makes me wonder, why did they do that? So next we're going on to the swords. Here are the swords, ace through king. And again, not much variance here. The Four of Swords does have some, instead of the sword being under them, the sword is going across these three swords, sort of like they've done that work. And now they're resting. And the picture here is different. I can't quite get a good grasp on what this is, but in the Rider-Waite-Smith, it looks like a knight receiving a blessing, and the word Pax, kiss of peace, is written above them in the stained glass, but I do not see that here at all. So I just think it's about, the keyword, like rest, allowing your mind to rest, working through, a period of rest after working through heartache. That's usually how I read that card. Again, it always depends on the cards that surround it. But here I found it interesting that the Eight of Swords does not have water. And there was this sense that they are being forcibly grounded, right? Swords being air, excuse me, that they are being forcibly grounded in order to confront their fears. So they have the ability to move forward, yet it's as if they're procrastinating, and they don't want to necessarily face their fears because they realize what they have to confront. So then eventually they're going to have to get to a place where they confront their fears, no matter how long they procrastinate. And there's I think they're afraid. It feels like they may be afraid of feeling that emotion. I'm sorry, being afraid of feeling that emotion here in this card due to that lack of water, but they're going to have to confront what they're so worried about anyway. And that moves into the 10, where you confront the fears. It's the end of that cycle. You've gotten over the worst, and now a new day is on the horizon. But here, he's face up. He's not facing the rising sun the way that the guy does in the character does in the Rider-Waite-Smith. So it may feel like it is over. Like it may feel like this is a final ending of everything. Your life is over, but you're not. When you're in that place, you're not seeing the sun that's there. So when this card comes up in this deck for me, I think it's important to remember, like, even though you don't feel that a new day is coming, you just have to, be patient and remain diligent. The Queen of Swords and the King of Swords. I absolutely love this King of Swords. He looks really bored and unamused, and it feels like, how do I say this? Like, he wants to cause drama, right? It's like he's trying to cause drama because he's waiting for someone to challenge him so he can cut them down. Like, he's just bored and he wants to be entertained, and he's he knows it all, so he doesn't need to do any more learning. He just seems like he wants to cut someone down, like he's out for blood. But the reality is, it could just be his wife. He's sick of listening to her, so he just wants to take it out on somebody else. But this is one of my favorite cards in this deck. I absolutely love the King of Swords in this deck because it just does feel like he's asking to be challenged. It's like that really smart kid in school who, nothing you gave them was challenging enough. And that feels like this king feels like that to me. So I really like that. All right, so here we go, on to the wands. All right, so here are the wands, ace through king. These four cards are pretty much the same as the Rider-Waite-Smith. I will say here, the Five of Wands feels more like a gentleman's debate than physical competition. I almost feel like there's this sense that as you're on the journey through the wands, there's sort of the gatekeepers, right? It's like, okay, you see the potential, you're making a plan, you're looking forward to the future, you make the commitment. Now you have to get through the gatekeepers in order to be victorious and allowed to go through the rest of the journey. That's kind of how this card feels to me. So I like that interpretation of it. In the Nine of Wands, he is unbandaged. So this feels more like boundary setting, um, knowing what you will and you will not allow within your life, knowing what how far you have come, and because of how far you've come, you know what you will and you will not do from here on out. So this feels more like really creating a boundary for yourself, but sometimes creating those boundaries can create burdens. Um, this king, as opposed to the Rider-Waite-Smith. The Rider-Waite-Smith, it's he sits perfectly sideways, and or I think mostly, but it's sort of like his throne in the Rider-Waite-Smith is blocking the future. But here he is looking toward the future, and it makes me feel like he is restless and he doesn't like being tired down or tied down by his duties and his responsibilities, and he's like itching to get out of there, as opposed to this queen um, who appreciates, well, how do I say this? It's like she's reveling in her position as a leader. She appreciates where she is sitting because she knows what it took for her to get there, as a teacher, as a leader, and as a guide. Like, she is a guide for those who are seeking growth, and she feels ready to welcome the seekers, to help them. Whereas the king feels more like, I need to get out of here. This is not for me, but I have to be here because this is the path I chose. So that's what I have for the wands. Overall, I absolutely love this deck. It's one of my favorites to read with. I do have a second copy of this deck because this one has gotten quite worn. It follows along beautifully with the Rider-Waite-Smith. It has variances that still allow you to take something new from it. And I find that my readings are a bit more blunt and concise when I read with this deck. I feel like it comes from each card having this really beautiful blend of lightness and darkness to them. This is a great beginner's deck, in my opinion, as it does read true to the Rider-Waite-Smith. So if you're not drawn to the art on the RWS, this is a deck you may want to consider as an alternative. And I just feel like the deck, it just reads, it's straightforward, and that really allows me to get right to the point when I'm doing readings. So that's all I have for now. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and have a great day. See you guys soon.